asalaamaaleykum yéen ñi nga xam ne yéen a ngi seetaan Gambia Radio and Television Services man la seen xarit Maam Jeng borom bakku bi yéen da ngeen ko yëngal man ma di ko yëngal fii ci GRTS.
Hello, I'm Mudiwa, and I'm sure you've never heard about the weekly buzz before, but I will be buzzing into your homes every single week to bring you the latest buzz in town, only on GRTS.
Ngela mincham apalu alterima la mincham sen harit live sab connect GRTS.
Damane, kan mo am fit pour taxaw live reloma nga re ñepp dal di haatay man Abdoulaye Badji ci bir GRTS pare neen pour xam who's the Gambia's funniest comedian te so leen pare we gonna Gangnam Style.
Open Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style.
Of East Africa, right? These are the parts of the landscape that are just generating a lot of water. And loss of these rainforests on the sides of these mountains is having a tremendous impact on the hydrological cycle and reducing water availability in the dry season for communities living downslope.
Waters from Kilimanjaro's cloud forest are channeled to supply the small farms or shambas that cluster around the slopes. The Chaga people who live in this area have been developing a farming system over many hundreds of years that has proved highly resilient. But will it survive the potential impacts of climate change?
The Chaga home gardens has proved to be more resistant against change of climatic factors compared, for example, with the lower areas in the savanna. So if we have an increase of temperature and a decrease of precipitation, ongoing trends like this, then I would say the Chaga home gardens have the biggest chance to survive longest.
The Chaga people do not live in compact villages with their fields outside. Rather, each family builds their house within their fields, so the people are dispersed over the land. The farming system has become known as home gardens. Rather than farming single crops, each shamba contains many plant species growing side by side, each chosen to gain value from the proximity of the other. And not only side by side. Crops are also farmed vertically, pumpkin, coffee, banana and timber, each growing above the other. If one crop does badly, there are others to take its place. Albin has been farming the slopes of Kilimanjaro since he was a boy.
The advantage of this home garden, it has got so many uses because it gives food for the people, it also gives food for the animals, and also it gives cash crop for school fees and even building houses or improving your livestock.
Starting at ground level, Albin shows us the plants and the different levels they can be found.
Now, this is a pumpkin. The leaves are used for stiff porridge, and the fruits, they can be cooked as food. Then here we have got a coffee tree, and actually this is how the coffee should look like. You can see here it's already pruned. It is a cash crop, and we have got banana there. It gives food, food for the family. And also banana shade the coffee. And we have got shade trees. It shade the coffee and it shade the banana. And these trees, roots fix nitrogen and also give very high class timber.
The Chaga are becoming victims of their own success. Tradition dictates that within the family, each son must inherit a proportion of the land. As the generations have passed, the houses have been getting closer and closer. Now, some shambas are too small to be viable. In the search for land, some are now farming the plains area around the mountain. But this area is the most vulnerable to climate change. The temperature is rising, and the water tower, the mountain, is supplying less water.
In this lowland, the problem here, it is water. We don't have irrigation channel because of the way. There is no way of bringing the irrigation channel around here. And bananas which it is planted here, it is dependent on rain. That's why you can see them that they are not healthy.
As farm holdings become smaller, at some point it becomes untenable to continue to treat that as a farm or to make your living off of that as a farm. So you move on to other livelihood options. Some of those options mean you go and cut down forest, or you move on to more marginal land and begin cultivating there. And again, they're farming with no agricultural inputs, so that it's basically mining the soil.
What these farmers on the marginal land will need is crops that yield greater bounty and are resilient to climate change. The International Crop Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics, ICRISAT, has its headquarters for Eastern and Southern Africa in Kenya. Their aim? To bring science to the aid of agriculture. They're interbreeding crops to increase yield, increasing tolerance to changes in climate, and increasing resistance to pests and diseases. Saeed Salim and Estance Guata are checking a trial planting of pigeon pea, the slit grain similar to lentils. They believe it has great potential for this part of Africa.
Yeah, and in our breeding program at the moment we have 3 different types of pigeon pea, namely the short duration type, which as we can see is already maturing, and the second type, which is medium duration, is only flowering at the moment, as we can see, and the third type, which is the long duration type, is not yet even started flowering.
Short duration is for monocropping, but people with resources, because if you can see here, if you cannot control pests, resource-poor farmers cannot, then they cannot grow it. It is for people with resources, that is rich farmers.
One of the main things we are breeding for is the seed characteristics. They have to meet the local market qualities, namely bold seededness, and the seed color has to be white.
And they have to cook also fast.
And also the time to cook has to be fast.
The biggest market is in India, where they take about 80% of the requirements here, and then the niche market in Europe, particularly in UK. The window for Indian subcontinent is between May
and November.
Yeah. And then we are at advantage because at that time their crop is still in the field.
And the demand is very high. Therefore, they can fetch very high prices.
Conventional interbreeding takes time. Advances in molecular biology now allows for crops to be altered at the genetic level.
What we do is to look for genes that confer a particular trait to local varieties. The process starts from DNA extraction. The best quality DNA is normally extracted from fresh leaf material. This is a genome grinder. It is possible to put almost 200 leaf samples in this genome grinder, and the leaf samples are ground and then taken to the next process. After the DNA has been extracted, we then take it through the process of what we call amplification. And finally, we are able to detect whether the gene that confers a particular trait is there or not. And if the gene is there, we then cross the plant that has got that gene with the locally adapted variety, and then check whether the trait has been incorporated. Laboratories like these are very, very important in the future of Africa, because through biotechnology applications, we are able to develop varieties that are locally adapted to their environmental conditions, that are high yielding, that are resistant to diseases within a much shorter time compared to conventional breeding.